Welcome to the flowerschool.com video library. I'm Leanne Kessler, Director of the Floral Design Institute, and today I'm here to share with you a short segment on floral rings. As professional florists, we spend day in, day out creating designs for others, making sure they're perfect, making sure everything fits the needs of the order, and then sometimes a touch of whimsy comes along. It's summertime, we want to have fun with flowers, and we think about all the parties, all the weddings, all the picnics, all the reunions, all the events where maybe a little bit of whimsy, a flower ring, would be the perfect accessory. The base of the ring is nothing more than the flat wire from the Oasis company. It makes a perfect base. Comes in so many different colors. I'm going to start with this tangerine gold color, kind of an orangey gold. It takes just a little bit, maybe 2 inches, 2.5 inches, cutting it off, and then using a jeweler's needle nose plier. So it's got the smooth edge, it's not serrated, just winding it around and overlapping. By overlapping, you can adjust it to fit whichever finger by pulling it out a little bit, pushing it back together if you want it smaller, using this beautiful strong pink. Again, just a couple of inches, don't need a lot. Wrapping it around, bring it back in, and then overlapping it, pressing it together, checking to see if it fits my finger. And if I decide I want it on a different finger, I can just reach in and tighten it down, put it on another. And then even the silver, just 2 inches, giving it a twist. Bring it back around on itself, overlapping. And you can see it's quick and easy. You can make a ring for every finger, lickety-split, and it's beautiful. As you create your rings, you can use the flat wire base just as it is, or you can enhance it with other materials. And so many different ways to do that. Using the bullion wire, using both the gold and silver together, pulling them off, unwinding it. Get this to unwind, there we go. And then after you have a length, which I'm shooting for a little over 2 feet, give it a cut. Then taking the 2 ends, just wrap them around your fingers. Not too tight, you don't want it to be a tourniquet. But I'm using about 3 fingers, wrapping it around, and then twisting it. So I get a figure 8. Then I can fluff out all those wraps, and it gives me a flower shape. So that gives a nice little base to enhance over the top of the ring. Doesn't have to be fancy, just kind of winding it loose. If you want to do a ribbon, you can do the same thing. Just taking the ribbon, tying a bow back and forth. And then tying it off with just a bit of wire. Tying it all together. Getting all the little pieces in there. There we go. You can see it makes a nice fluffy bow. And that can become a base. Or if I like the beaded wire, maybe something a little fancier. It's not very much to do, about 2 feet. And then you just wad it together. So it's very easy. It's crushed together into a wad, very technical term. Nothing too worrisome about it. Just kind of pile it one on top of another so you get a nice rounded area. All the wires kind of overlapping together and the beads towards the outside. Just kind of twist it till it's all tucked in together You don't have any loose ends hanging out. So you get this little round disc of beads. Then when you go to add these onto your ring base for the enhancement, I use the glue dots, but I don't need the whole dot. I really only need a half of a dot. So I cut that in half and then pull it off of the paper and lay that directly against the ring. Now the overlap part is in the back, and I'm placing this on the front and then pulling it off. And then I can adhere the bow directly onto there, and it will stay perfectly. Again, nice and easy, so it's just the bow. And going back, grabbing another half a dot, laying it against, and removing the tab, and taking the disc and just pressing it down firmly onto there, and the glue sticks to the flat wire underneath and the beaded wire on the top. And then lastly, with the silver, one more half dot. Making sure that it's pressed on firmly, then pulling it off. Then taking the little floret, don't need the tab, there we go. Pressing that down against it. Now I have a decorative base ready to support all my flowers, and very pretty, even all on its own. As you add the flowers, it doesn't take very much. You can go through the cooler and find one of these and one of those and maybe two of those, and just kind of use things that maybe were almost left over. Like I have one Craspedia, Billy Ball, a little bit of New Zealand Pittosporum. I have a single Stephanotis bloom. Could use a Gerber daisy, could use a bit of a sedum succulent, maybe even a little larkspur floret, or the seed pod that hasn't opened out yet, the tight bloom from a scabiosa. So lots of different choices, all that can fit on. When you work, let's start with the plain one that I didn't enhance. So a half dot right onto the gold tangerine, pulling it off, finding the tip here. There we go. And then taking and totally cutting off the stem. And maybe just a single leaf. And then setting that onto the glue dot, taking the leaf, setting it right beside. And as simple as that, you've got a single ring. I know it sounds silly, but isn't that fun? Just that bright yellow bauble sitting there. If I want something a little fancier, maybe going to the Stephanotis. Now it's got such a long bloom. You don't want that full trumpet. You want to cut it down so you have just the flat part. So now I've got just the tip. Then I can take a single glue dot, set it into the center of the ring, right on top of the wire band, and then pull that off. Making sure it adheres nicely as I pull. There we go. And then taking the bloom, setting it right into the center. Now I've got a center part that I want to fill in, bringing the beads in there. So using one more of the beads, just cutting it off. And this time, rather than a dot, just a little tiny bit of the U-glue, because that way I can get it in there easily. Just putting a little bit of glue, or excuse me, Oasis Floral adhesive. I said U-glue, didn't I? The U-glue dots have been what I've worked with, but now I'm switching to the adhesive. Just a tiny dab of it, not very much. Dropping it right down into the center. Now that's going to stay there beautifully, holding it all together. That one I just love. So many different choices. So you can do kind of rustic, very fancy, both work, or you can do a combination. You don't have to stop with just a single bloom. Maybe on the ribbon, looking at a floret from the larkspur. Maybe a floret from the scabiosa, little bitty. Maybe even a little tiny bit of status. So you can do lots of little bits. And taking the glue, this time one U-glue dot right into the bow. Pulling that off. Making sure it adheres nicely. And then just setting things into place, making sure that I tuck them into the glue. And then I've got a nice little country look. So I've got rustic, I've got a romantic country, I've got fancy. Then for this guy, I'm going to use one of the little tiny pieces from a succulent. So I look for one that I love. There's a nice, let's see, which one's going to look the prettiest? I think right there. Pluck it loose. Now this is the trick with these. They have a little bit of juice or sap that oozes out, and you don't want that to lessen the amount of stickiness with the glue. So using just a little bit of clear nail polish. Yes, a little bit of clear nail polish across the back. That seals it so that the sap will stay in. Let that set, dry. And then again, one more of the U-glue dash dots. And right down against. Pulling it loose. Setting it into place. And this time, I can even pull some of that little flower of wire up around it to enhance. Making sure it's inserted well. There we go. And it gives me a very contemporary look. So many different choices, all from a simple ring base. And you can do so many things so easy, so inexpensively. We use so many different things. Let's just take a moment and kind of back up so that you know what I worked with. First off, the base was the flat wire, and that comes in so many colors. Then we enhanced with ribbon, with bullion wire, with beaded wire. Again, lots of different choices. How I attached it, I used the U-glue dashes. I call them glue dots as well, but the U-glue dashes. And then the Oasis Floral adhesive glue. And then my little trick that I wanted to make sure I used was the nail polish. Whenever you have something that has a sap that's going to leak and maybe lessen the bond with the glue, nail polish will solve that, and the clear is perfect. Now, oftentimes I'm asked, where do you get your inspiration? How do you know what to do? What made you think of putting a ring together like this? And I have to tell you, my inspiration this time came from the first Thursday art walk right here in Portland, Oregon. I was walking down the alleyway where vendors set up selling their artwork, and there was one woman that I go and visit every time, and I just fall in love with her jewelry. And she does rocks on rings and bracelets and necklaces, and I always look and I think, oh, I wish I had every single one of those. And then I keep going because I just can't quite commit at the moment. But I came home and I thought, gee, I wish I had a rock ring. And I know that sounds so silly, but I thought, well, why don't I have a rock ring? I have lots of rocks, and that's where it all began. I thought, I need a rock ring. So using a little bit of the flat wire, a half of a dot, adhering it down, and then attaching the rock. I made myself a rock ring, and I wore it thinking, well, I wonder how long that's going to last. It'll probably fall off. But I wore it all day. And the next day, I went to the flower market, did my shopping, wore it to class, wore it out to dinner. And the next day, it's still together. So it held fabulously. And the rock ring, one of my favorites, is the inspiration for all these others. And I know they're going to stay together. They're not going to fall apart, because if it's heavy enough to hold the rock, It's definitely heavy enough to hold the flowers. For more creative inspiration, check out our website at flowerschool.com. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to contact us. You can reach us through the website or by telephone at 1-800-819-8089. If it's easier, go ahead and use my email. It's Leanne, Leanne, at floraldesigninstitute.com. Now it's your turn. You've been inspired, maybe even with a rock. What are you going to make for your ring? Have fun and do something you love.